Hey, it's Chris. So what are we talking about today? We're saying don't back anything. Me, with a little help from the Balrog, are going to tell you why you should not back anything on crowdfunding. All of the games you're wondering about, concerned about, questioning, and a little bit of info to talk you off of the ledge. Or, as always, full disclaimer at the beginning of the video, as usual, if I'm wrong and you want to back it anyway, that is completely okay. Do you get games that fit for you, that are right for you to hit the table? Accessibility, ease of play, price point, mechanistic approach, knowledge about what it is firsthand foremost. I don't know. Balrog's somehow going to help me. We'll do this. Let's go. Yeah, we're starting with Lands of Evershade, right? Millions and millions of the dollars of the Rocks fans. But what we're got going on here is basically Dungeons and Dragons done in a tabletop narrative style of things. So if you are heavy narrative, if you are a tabletop role player game person at heart and don't have the group, don't have the accessibility, don't want to have someone or yourself have to be the GM, this is looking like a great, fantastic, utterly awesome game. If you want more gameplay, why is this different? I love a crawl, I love a smash 'em, I love something unique mechanically from a campaign narrative, whatever, boss battler style things. I also don't get any idea that this is going to be in any way, shape, or form that whatsoever. Now, the problem with it is, right, is that it's still a tiny prototype and everyone is exclaiming about the narrative, the narrative. I'll make the argument that most of these narrative games, as much as I love me some narrative in a lot of these games, and Trespass Odyssey, right, Normandy, upcoming, all of these style of things. If I really want really good narrative, folks, I'm going to go read a book. I'm going to go read a freaking book. So, you know, the bar is still honestly set very low for a lot of these narrative-based games. I'm sorry, it is. I love them, but we also have to call a spade sometimes. The writing is not like, meh. It's good. It's salvageable. It's fine for what it is. And so if that's your main reason going in, is you want a really good narrative, this has potentially the makings of it. But just like I said, a story of many from a month or two ago on crowdfunding, right? The problem is not the small sample size of the prototype. You can make something, a prototype, look really freaking good. But can you extend that to a couple 100,000 words later at some point when this all needs to get done? And I'd swear that Awakened Realms said with one of their other previous projects, hey guys, we're done with the two-wave shipping. Well, I guess they decided not to be not done with the two-wave shipping, because now we have the two-wave shipping again going down here, right? Which is the main issue I guess I'm going to talk about here for a second, because this says estimated delivery, the stretch goals, which you're adding on, which you're saying are now true monetary stretch goals, which again, they're going back to that after a couple years of not doing that and playing that game. Now you're saying split wave shipping, second half of 2026. You're talking the rest of this game, or if you're doing single wave shipping right here, single wave shipping, you're not going to have this game for easily 2 years. I'm going to say it's going to be 2.5 years. 2.5 years to just give them a loan. Why is this game coming out now? That's my other main question with this one. Do you really need the loan for that long? You're coming to me with that unfinished of a project, or this scope is that big, right? If you're that unfinished, I wish you'd come later. If this scope is that big, well, that's why I say you're going to be lucky to get it within 2.5 years. Which begs the question, why not just wait until they put a rulebook out a year from now before the pledge manager even closes, before they're even within a year of the shipping date? Or why even would you consider doing split wave shipping? Because otherwise you get a Trudvang situation where all of a sudden I get the second wave of Trudvang after I hated the first wave and I'm going, I just want to sell you sight unseen. Do you want that? Do you want the gameplay? I always give them, again, every single time. This is not me just bashing on Awakened Realms. It's not that. I love the fact that they split out standees. I love the fact that they're going acrylic. I wish, honestly, they go even further and go full acrylic, no miniatures, but I know where the money is as well, so I don't blame them. But the gameplay from a crawl, unique mechanical battling style of things, which is the other half of this game, you're better off with any of the other things out there, Townsfolk Tussle, Aeon Trespass, Odyssey, or even Fateforge, Kin of the Wild, which is going to be coming back to crowdfunding in February, or your Dungeon Doria, which is currently crowdfunding, or any of the, Cthulhu, Deathmate, whatever it is, right? And again, I would be very hesitant to back this if you are not specifically looking for Dungeons & Dragons, the board game. This screams that to me. This screams a whole lot of effort is going into the character creation, creating a Dungeons & Dragons style level handbook, and you're paying a significant premium for that. Are you looking for that? If you are, fantastic. Again, core pledge, best value. Anything beyond that, crapshoot. Because we've seen that with a few of the other ones in the last year or two, where the difference between, it's not Nemesis anymore. It's not Tainted Grail first time around anymore. It's not even ISS Vanguard anymore. Since some of those, the price has not been that discrepantly different between campaign and wide retail. So if you don't need some of the fear FOMO driven exclusives here, like a standing initiative bag, right? I guess I'd beg the question of, having gameplay now with, again, a game found exclusive that they weren't really going back to previously. Why all of a sudden the change with the exclusives and the split shipping and those sort of things that weren't going to be there previously that you kind of said? So is this for you? Honestly, I'd love to see more mechanics. I don't think this gives me enough comfortable mechanic making decision to feel like I need it right now. But at the same time, like I said, right? As someone who failed doing a D&D group during the pandemic, this is tempting. I would love that. I did not like being the DM. I would love to be able to experience that cooperatively with other people around the table. So it will always be a temptation. But is it a temptation enough? And I don't freaking know. Now, Avalon the Riven Veil. Again, nowhere near the money comparatively, but let's take a step back and say area control, miniatures, Shadowborn Games, Oathsworn. Are you Pedigree? Because both of these, I'll make the argument, you have a lot of people probably looking at both of these as, wow, they put out all the other stuff. I mean, right? Like if I go back to the bottom of Awakened Realms pages right here, right? They say, okay, look, here's all our pedigree and our track record. That's a fallacy and a trap you can't find yourself in. It's like a Stonemeyer Champion thing. You will not like all of their games, period. If you back it off of that, you will fail inevitably and not like what you're getting. I don't know how close to Blood Rage this is. People are making that comparison. I just don't freaking know. I want to see more of the asymmetry. I love the fact, again, let's contrast this, right? Rules right here. Boom shakalaka. But I need to know more of what the asymmetry is bringing to it in terms of the gameplay. I need to know a little bit more what these expansions are exactly giving me. Are these things that are going to be always want to be included? Or are they things that are just sort of like we saw with Heroes of Might and Magic, where it's just more? Like they're all very similar. They all have a slight different twist, but they're not actually that different. The other thing I'd say, mechanically speaking, because you're like, Chris, I don't care about any of that stuff, Chris. Mechanics. Mechanically speaking, do you want to have a significantly different game in terms of asymmetry versus not being asymmetric? Are you okay with having to adjust, or the ability to adjust? That might be a big thing for you with players of different experience levels within a game. Do you like having a catch-up mechanic, or do you just say, you know what, you're not as good as me, screw you, see you later, leave you in the dust, because this game will allow you to do that with variable lengths of the game as well? Again, I don't know with some of these expansion content situations. I think they're very, very tempting. They're very, very pretty with all of these games. But that'd be my question to you. Why are you buying it? Are you buying it because of the unlocks? Are you buying it because of the FOMO? Are you buying it because it's a slight price discount? Are you buying it because you're looking at this and going, I don't have enough asymmetric area control, things on a map game, And this one strikes my fancy in such a unique, completely different way that I can't afford not to have it. That's the question I guess I would ask you to ask yourself more than anything else with this one. And you need it to be miniature driven because, you know, it looks like right here we have a retail edition with standees. And if this is anything like Wonderland's War, I love the standees in Wonderland's War. I hate the plastic because I am a non-gray plastic person. And I give them kudos for putting out the plastic here if I can find it on the page that's not all just gray. It has different coloring based on the faction stuff. So I like that. But is that enough to win you over, especially with a price point wise situation? World Order. Speaking of things that you don't have the table for, right? I mean, hegemony. Everyone loves hegemony. You know, it didn't make the top 100 in under a year because people were, you know, hyping it from a crowdfunding standpoint, right? Because I don't even think there were that many crowdfunding backers. Or if there were, that means like almost every crowdfunding backer was looking at it and just absolutely gushing and drooling over the everything that it is, right? As a heavy, asymmetric, you know, 2 to 3+ hour, you know, economic game, this is going to be more streamlined. But if those factors, right, apart from the game length were the reason you couldn't get it played, this one is not going to change that. I love the fact that this rule book actually is not half as long as I thought it was going to be. I love it that it's not driven by the depth of the rule book. It's driven by the depth of how you want to use all of these action cards in the multi-variable different ways of the 4 main actions you're taking. I love the fact that you can be any of these 4 in any combination as you're playing this. You know, I look at Daybreak behind the camera and I say, I always have to play with A and B. Or if I have 3 people, I always have to play with A, B, and C. I can't play with B, C, and D, you know? So with that, I love this. But this is also going to be analysis paralysis so heavily driven, even with the card aspects of things. And I guess I would make the argument or the question to you that if this game has anything less on a regular basis of 4 people, is it going to have the meta that you want? Is it going to have the ability to have the checks and balances where this game really thrives, right? Everyone says you can play Root at 2, you can play Root at 3, right? But really, it's at 4 with everyone knowing what they're doing repeatedly that keeps people in check. You know, A keeps B in check, B keeps C, C keeps D, D keeps A and B in check. Those are the dynamics that you want. And if you just can't do that, or if you have varying level of skill in your group, this could really fall flat in that regard. I think the mechanisms are nice. I think they flow very smoothly. I'm very pleased by it. I'll have a separate video out either right before this or right after this. But is that you, right? Is that you? If it's not, don't get in on this because, again, just like with the first 2, Pedigree. Oh, Hegemony was awesome. This one's going to be just as, nope, it's not for you then, right? There have been plenty of games I've said I would love to, nope, get off the hype bandwagon wave and get it if it's right for you. It's going to be a fantastic game, but there's a reason I don't have Hegemony in my collection and I never will, right? So is World Order any better for that for you? Now, Sweetlands. Uchiwa-Koya's heaviest ever. $500,000. This is Eagle Griffin Lacerda style heaviness. Do you have the bandwidth for this? This is not Aqua Garden. This is not Ostia. This is 200 minutes of gameplay. Is that your wet dream or not? Apart from that, mechanistically, no freaking glue. Just don't back it, right? I'm gonna have a video, like a shorts coming out soon. That's just me screaming at the camera with a background of all these pages saying, don't back it, 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 right? That's what one of you guys wanted in the comment section down below. I hear you. 5,000 people, though, are going for this. Right? Uchiwa-Koya stuff isn't easy to come by, and it's not on secondary market, and the web shop that they do is more expensive. So you can FOMO because you might not get it elsewhere, but FOMO, you know, collector's item, or FOMO, are you actually gonna freaking play it? Storyfold Wildwoods. You know what? This is, in my opinion, a Legacy of You style center board mixed with narrative components. It's cheap. cheaper than a lot of the other solo games that we've seen. It's deluxeified, but dynamic card play with some randomness here, and the sliding mechanism a la similar to Arc Nova. It's great, it's clever, it's underused, but it's also underused because, you know what? I don't think necessarily you're always going to like that as well. And again, this is why you pick up it at retail, right? If this is $39 right now for the base pledge, no deluxeifications on crowdfunding, right? Retail is almost always 97.364159, sorry, not going to pi there, percent cheaper at the retail side of things with the retail level. So you're going to get the Kickstarter exclusive pack, but I guess I would make the argument here. If you have a Kickstarter exclusive pack here, how much is a pack worth? Is a pack worth $10? Is it worth $20? Is it worth $25? Is it worth $30? Because that's what you're sort of having to start to wonder with this little pack as a whole, right? Beautiful. It's got table presence galore. But I also make the argument that if you're not a solo player, this one ain't going to convert you. And it fits what Open Owl Studios has done in the lines of your Mythwinds and your Stone Sagas and that style. It's a very nice narrative, open world, Zen-esque experience in a solo version now. But if you're not a solo person, this isn't going to be the thing that's going to convert you either. Western Legends Stories. Again, freaking a ton of money for this open world, sandbox-esque campaign game. It is not a legacy game, though. They make that very clear in the comment section. One of the big differences is you're going to have 2 actions instead of 3, so potentially less downtime, but right? 6 scenario base that you can link together or potentially play as one-offs as long as you link them together later. Again, legacy games on crowdfunding, huge crapshoot, huge roll of the dice, right? Because you can't show me some of the things that are supposed to entice me as a whole. And I'd make the argument that legacy games for $120, that's a ton of money, right? When you think about all the other legacy games that have gone to retail. If you love the Western and Western Legends vibe, yeah, but it's not compatible. You're not mixing and matching. You're getting a standalone. So is this going to become an either or situation if you're a previous considerate backer looking at this the second or third time around? I'd also make the argument that as an open world sandbox-esque game, I understand the appeal of a solo side of things that they've included within Automa now. At the same time, I just feel like that is almost, okay, guys, you can play it at all counts for every person at all times, right? There are just certain mechanisms or certain situations I'm just not sure that always works well in. I guess it can. So like things like Iridia or that aspect, right? People playing that tons solo. Mage Knight, right? You can do that solo. That's the same thing, right? Well, kind of, sort of, not really. I don't know, right? You get a little expansion pack to go along with this, which is a fair number of actual gameplay content here. But I think the biggest problem is because you can only show me so much of what you're unlocking through these 6 scenarios, that it's a little bit all over the place. And I don't know if it's going to be a revive situation where, you know, the unlocks are really opening up and making you want to play the end game more, or is it a pandemic legacy where you open it up, you get there, and you're sort of, well, I've seen it, I've did it all. And that's what they say you can do if you just want to do the one-off without the linking. You can just play 6, scenario 6 that is, and just have it all unlocked because that's where things will be. But is that going to be worth it for you? I have no idea. I guess I go flipsies too. From a campaign style of things, if you want to solo it and you don't have a consistent group to play with, the solo might be fantastic. But also with campaign games, I can't stop saying legacy games in the outtakes, there's enough tried and true out there that this shouldn't be your first foray unless this is the end-all be-all theme for you. They just put out a video before the end of the campaign here of a solo playthrough, so you can actually see what some of the playthrough looks like. And that might be the biggest make it or break it. But again, campaigns all over the place, and campaigns dime a dozen. Are you willing to pay deluxe for, well, this? This is frickin' Battleship, the dungeon game, right? I say that very lovingly, and the fact that they got $100,000 for this light family weight Battleship style game is actually freaking tremendous. But it's Battleship, folks. If you don't like the idea of battleships and with a little bit of Marco Polo, This game in a nutshell is not going to work for you. I think the multiplayer is very interesting. I think the expansion stuff is almost necessary. As someone who's only played the base game, I like what the expansion is offering even more, I guess is really what I'm saying. That I, similar to some of the flat out games, would say I would not want to play without it, with the Cascadia Rollings, for example. That style of things, it makes you go, is the base game really that appealing to me if I need to buy an expansion for it? I don't know. Stretch goals are fine. Multiplayer is fine. But this is mainly also, I'd make the argument, one of those games you can play multiplayer, but I like the head-to-head two-player only version. And I always have mixed feelings about secret packages, right? Secret packages are fine, but it's basically saying we're going to slowly add a little bit of elemental stuff to it in order to layer the depth and not overwhelm you at first. But if you're one of those people, are you going to play it enough to get through all of that, to get it all played, to know full game on the table? Is it for me? Do you like the randomness of moving? The dice allocation with the cubes that you're going to having to be managed, right? The issue is that when you're rolling the dice and these monsters and these traps, you just might roll kind of cruddy and you may not have the cubes to allocate or to mitigate. So that may leave you, well, kind of lackluster. And if your opponent just is really lucky on the battleship side of things, similar to Battleship, right? Sometimes there's just nothing you can also do. Is that going to be a breaking experience for you? It's not for me. I know some people are like, hey, I need my mitigation. I need the ability to control this and be more strategic. I don't think I'm one of those people, but if you are, this is going to be a complete and utter miss. I think multiplayer has try before I buy written all over it. How do you effectively manage 2 or 3 explorers on a multi-level layer with 1 exit? That's very tricky. The dynamics of that are going to be very interesting to see. I love the idea of it, but the execution has to be chef's kiss. Otherwise, it could fall a little flat with so many like one versus all situations. And when I think multiplayer, I don't think necessarily one versus all. And I know a lot of you guys in the comment section do not like one versus all. I like it. You are not me, right? I get told that all the time. So that's what you kind of got to be aware of. I'm not going to make the argument that Kids Table Board Games doesn't put out a solid product, but this is also significantly more expensive than a lot of their other deluxeified versions of their previous games like Power Plants, as well as Maple Valley, as well as Creature Comforts, right? Those were all like $49, $50, $55, whatever they were. And the expansion with the deluxeifications in this one is what is that? $83. So it's going to be easy to play. It's going to be easy to learn. The setup is a little bit tricky. That's the other thing I'd say. Because of how you can't have more than 2 of these obstacles in the same path to get to the same item reward, well, it gets a little tricky at the end and you run out of walls. And so how do you, or do you like doing that? It's going to be good, but there's a lot of potential downside in that way as well. Are they going to manipulate the cubes that different enough? Are the abilities that different enough to make you go, this is really worth it? I mean, that was my big problem with Stone Spine Architects, but will it have enough for you if you're one of those, well, I need a ton of stuff? Well, that's the reason you'd FOMO and get all this. But is that really the reason to get it? Because you're FOMOing because the retail might not have quite the same amount. Well, we'll see. Revenant! If you didn't like Voidfall, you're not going to like this. If you didn't like the iconography of Voidfall, you're going to hate this. If you don't like having to deal with hidden objectives, hidden faction power allegiances, this one is not going to be for you. It's easier to get into than Voidfall, but do not confuse it as lesser. This is still going to bring fits if you're not looking at this from a heavy game style of things. It's lighter than Voidfall. It's a lighter than some of the other Mindclash stuff. Folks, that's a high bar to begin with. The real reason you're getting it, going past all this other stuff, right, is you're really getting it because you need the modules and the bling. The modules and the bling offering a whole new type of faction and research vessel to go along with what, like the 6 or 7 that are already in there in case that's not enough. And a new faith module adding a whole new paradigm of allegiance depending on who and what, right? So module nice, probably not going to add a ton mechanistically until you've played it a dozen times and gotten the rinse and repeat down in the first place. I won't say anything about value because for a mini deluxe Euro for 83 and a max deluxe Euro for 129, it sits right up there, like I said, with Sweetlands for the Eagle Griffin Lacerda heavy style. Almost the exact same freaking price. But as it says here, just go get it in the web shop later for a slightly higher price once the early reviews are out. Because in the realm of space worker placement, we have seen tons over the past 2 or 3 years. In the heavy Euros, there's already like 3 in this video. So the lack thereof is never the issue. A la your dungeon crawls, a la your whatever it may be, like Pomperos earlier in the year. How are you differentiating? Are you differentiating off of theme? Are you differentiating off of mechanism? Are you differentiating off of pedigree? The other thing that I would question as someone who has had mixed experiences with this in several different games is that with these ships that have the little spaces at the bottom that you can fit stuff in, sometimes it's really, really nice. Sometimes it just feels like it gets in the way. What type of gamer are you in that sense? Do your cubes have to have little ridges on them like this when it gets replaced, right? How much of those little ridges are important to you versus a cube system? I'd make the argument when we look at the different pledge levels here, right? If you're going for the Admiral pledge, this is a lifestyle, i.e., I love it game. Again, not that you can't have it, but it's the difference between getting Castles of Burgundy Special Edition and then getting the 10th Anniversary Edition at retail. If you're just kind of okay with it, if you're not going to play it 70 times a year, you're better off with the 10th Anniversary Edition for a tenth of the price. You're better off picking up the retail version, which has almost everything you need to actually just play it, including the gameplay content that's unlocked, and waiting and seeing or waiting and trading on the secondary market. Fantastic game. This might be, comparatively, going up there with, say, World Order, the best game of this whole video a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line. But similarly to that, along with World Order, along with that style, if this system doesn't fit you, if the iconography of Voidfall left you frustrated, if the heavier worker placements are a dime a dozen in your collection, is this going to stand out and stand up, or is it going to then just collect dust because you've got too many other ones, like this one, for example, which you already know is tried, tested, and true, and it's getting more module content? Karma Games, I don't know. You should get backing it on this one if you're looking at it, right? Clans of Caledonia is out of print everywhere else online. Get it for a better price here than anywhere else. But do you need the modules? Are the modules of the expansion really a make it or break it for you? It doubles the price of the game here from 39 euros to 78 euros because you're getting a big box and a lidded insert, right? So unless you need the big box, because we all know how useful big boxes are, as I was just talking about in another video that I filmed earlier, big boxes, I feel like, are actually the antithesis, the opposite of what they're meant to do. Big boxes make games more unwieldy rather than wieldy. Just because you can store all your stuff in one super fancy box that's probably oversized to begin with because they created an extra super overly large insert to fit it as well, it makes it more of a barrier to entry, personally speaking, than the game crammed into a box that's just regular size that you just stuffed everything in and it's overflowing and there's a little bit of lid rise and everyone's okay with that because lid rise is awesome. But you know what I'm saying? This is, again, heavy. It's fantastic. But is it for you from a dry Euro, dry Euro, dry Euro side of things? I'm teasing. But again, this one is a known quantity. So this one shouldn't be any hesitation one way or the other. You either know you love it already, and maybe you get just the base game here, or you pass. Vestige. This is Vindication 2.0. It is. It's better. It's more streamlined. Well, that's what everyone wants you to think because that's why they want you to buy it. Is it that much better than Vindication? No one freaking knows. And the truth is that they even kind of say, well, guys, it's not necessarily better than Vindication. It's just different. And that's the conundrum, right? If it's not better, should you buy it? Is it going to replace things? Or if you buy it, is it becoming an either or? Again, sort of why I think it could go either way. Is it going to be the Astro Knights to the Aeon Trespass Odyssey? Or is it going to be Dune Imperium Uprising to Dune Imperium, right? Dune Imperium Uprising, you go, I don't need all the expansions. I think it's freaking great just with the base game alone. It adds 2 or 3 elements that I love and make this an absolute masterpiece. Whereas Dune Imperium, you're like, I need a couple expansions to really flesh this out. Give me the Rise of Ix, give me the little promo cards and make it forking fantastic. Vindication, you've got like 3 big box expansions, a bunch of little promo scrap packs to go along with it to make it a great themeless Euro pushing cubes and resource management. I'm teasing. There is a thematic incorporation, but with a lot of these games with a Euro style, if you try and play too thematically, it actually goes against the strategy, and that's what I'm alluding to there. But Vestige, right? Which one is it going to be? Because it's got those elements. Or is it going to be Seven Wonders Duel and Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth, where, well, it's a coin flip. Some people still like the original with the expansions, and some, well, just love the new one because it's new and shiny. Or actually, because it's really freaking good. Again, no one really knows. No one really knows. The video is out there. They have thousands of views of comparing Vindication to Vestige. I'd make an argument it's a great entry point if you don't have Vindication. I'd also make the argument that it's kind of still a little bit of a unknown. As much as I want to love it, it's an unknown. Because it also gives me similar comparison vibes to a Terra Nova, Terra Mystica. If you take too much out, if you change it too much, if you streamline it too much, you may lose some of the elements that made people like the original so much in the first place that it just sort of falls short in some of those same ways. It's also a ton of price for a new game with a swanky addition, right? Game tray storage solution, upgraded components, card warehouse, and dividers. I'm paying a lot of money for a little bit of bling inside of a box. I'm getting 12 card packs galore, which is great. I just worry, okay, are these 12 card packs actually that useful? And if we scroll back up here, we can kind of take a comparison, right? Like with the promo packs, if it's 10 cards out of 190, that's one thing. If it's 10 extra cards on top of like 60 in the game box, that's a whole nother different ratio. And here you can see 12 endgame conditions, augmentation, all of these being 12. So when you go down to the gameplay bundle here and you start seeing some of these packs, these scrap packs, community crafted packs, all of these are offering 12 cards. Because if you can put out, as we scroll down here through the add-ons, that much content on day one that meshes so well, that's what kind of makes me feel is, was this just some of the stuff that was pulled out and is being separated out and sold a la carte, not a la mode, as I've said in previous videos. That's Chris for you right there. Just which ones are necessary, right? The Nemesis one, that's their AI system. I'd say that's probably not necessary. But with this, right, the Underworld scrap card pack, I don't even know what kind of cards those are. They're just, different types of cards in different ways. Which one of these are going to be helpful? The problem is you can't discern which ones are which. So what does that make people do? It makes people buy or feel like they need them all, especially when you're getting a good deal. Don't mind the community crossover thing. Again, I think that's fine, getting you more scrap packs and scrap cards to go along with it. But the biggest benefit is, well, if you're going over and getting the waste of parts. And if you're looking at the waste of parts here, yeah, I mean, this one is expensive. This is an expensive pandemic. I worry a little bit about the replayability with this one from a, just differences in the base game of how you're sort of managing it with the variable rooms that you can build along the way. I think there is the potential there, looking at how many cards they have going across in terms of that. But that'd be what I'd worry about, right? Is this a game where you can min-max it? Is this a game where you're going to have just better rooms known to you after several games? Is the escalation of the difficulty deck of the enemies that are being spawned by noise, which may not be your preferred way of having them interact, is that just going to be too bad or too easy? That's a fine line difficulty there. And again, I got to mention it, right? $130 for a lighter style cooperative game, $89 for the base pledge. That's not inexpensive, even with the standees to go along with it. So, like I said in the roundup video, not to beat a dead horse or echo it, but it also becomes, what small indie publisher do you pay a little bit of a premium on nowadays, rather than just pure, I'm getting a super great, awesome, over-the-top value instead. It reminds me a little bit of a different way of Mission Catastrophe. I think from Breaking Games, I'm probably screwing that up, but Mission Catastrophe, where you're, again, managing the different rooms, and they all have to be a certain health. I guess I would also worry a little bit about the scaling with this one, because you need to be playing with a certain number of characters no matter how many players are actually in the game. Is that going to be something, if you want to play this as like a 2-player style Pandemic and one of you has to control like 2 instead of 1 and the other one gets to do 1, or if you want a more full experience, what sort of scaling is going to be that? And I didn't see a ton of that in the rule book, so it'll be interesting to see how exactly that changes a little bit, or if there is truly a slightly better preferred player count given the dynamics that are there. Those would be my wonderments. Even having a prototype sitting on my kitchen table, that'd be where my thoughts are. And I wonder if that is a little bit of why it's not having as much funding. Truth be told, though, Isofarian Guard, when they put it out too, only had like $200,000 the first time. So, you know what? Don't overlook it, but be aware. Keyforge, Prophetic Visions. I don't know. Creep, new mechanic, saturation. That's the thing I worry about with this. How do you differentiate? Are these decks going to be easily as compatible with the previous editions? I mean, this is like the third realm of the TCG packs that they put out, I think even in the last year. And it's a big crapshoot. Do you get a deck you like? Because we all have certain styles. And if you get a deck you don't like, I mean, you're paying for like $12 a deck, essentially. And I think this prophecy mechanic is cool, but I just don't know how well it jives with the other stuff. And this is playing more heavily off of the TCG scene rather than the casual play. If you want casual play of 2-player asymmetric deck style of things, just go pick up a copy of Mindbug. Go pick up a copy of Wizards of Grimoire. Go pick up a copy of Summoner Wars that have like 5 factions or 6 factions in the base game, and it'll be a fraction of the price of getting, half a dozen decks of this. So unless you're a lover of this in the first place, I'd make the argument this probably also isn't an entry point whatsoever. Tanares, Expeditions. It's more streamlined. It's more roguelite. It's a little bit more random. Is that appealing to you? Do you want those aspects? This is not going to be your grand, sprawling, open world, sandbox-esque game. This is going to be more contained. This is going to be more Dragori, slight, off-kilter quests that may or may not be how you prefer to play this as a whole. Are the upgrades and are the unlocks going to be as satisfying as the 2 more recent games, Slay the Spire and Dead Cells, seem to be so far? If you like Tanares, is this going to replace, as again, sort of a vestige to Vindication, a more streamlined version of Tanares in a slightly different way? Does this compare or make you wish that you didn't get Odalin, consequently, previously on crowdfunding this year as well? Again, going back the flip side, is this just going to be the Terra Nova to Terra Mystica again, where they've taken too much out of what you really want depth-wise of a Tanares Adventures in the first place? And if that's the case, then it might just be not enough decision-making, not enough narrative, not enough campaign to satisfy you from that aspect for $100 triple-digit core box. There you go. Big projects all over the place. Why you shouldn't back them, or at least some thoughts to make you slow down on the FOMO so it's not collecting a whole lot of dust like several of my recent arrivals are. I'm looking at you, Trudvang Legends, expansions, and stretch goal box. Anybody want to buy that? Sell it for like $100 as a whole. It's a huge box. That's all I got. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. Don't back stuff. Back stuff. Do what you want to do. Just get some really freaking amazing good games for you. That's all I'm asking for.